Okay, so we're going to talk about the materials that you're going to need for this class. And the first thing that you're going to need is a palette, okay? So there are many different kinds of palettes that you can have. If you're buying the kit, there's a wood palette that's included, the kit that's at Santa Monica College, which would be fine. What I use is a plexiglass, a sheet of plexi, so it's relatively thick. In my studio, I use tempered glass, but having that around the house probably isn't the safest thing, so that's why plexiglass is good. But that's what I use. But if you don't want to have that, then the other thing you can get is a pad of palette paper. So this is made by Blick. They come white and gray, okay? And so this paper is waxy on one side. That's the side that you're going to be using. And then when you're finished, you can throw it away. So that's makes the cleanup easier, okay? I would think at least this size, 12 by 16 would be the size that you'd want. And then with the palette, you're going to need to have a palette knife, at the very least one. I like to have two, and I have here a bunch of different types. Well, not a bunch, three. This one, shaped like this, is pretty good because it's really hard to do anything to it. Whereas these thinner ones, a lot of times you can break them, so they don't last as long as something like this. You'll notice that they have wood handles and that they're metal. They have to be metal, okay? The reason for that is because you're dealing with solvents and oil paint and all that, and the plastic, and you're gonna be mixing and scraping off of the palette, so you have to have a sharp, hard edge, okay? So the important thing is that it be metal, all right? You're also going to need a palette cup, and into the palette cup goes painting medium, okay? So we're going to need to make a painting medium. Now you can buy them already made, and there are a lot of different kinds. So what I prefer is that you make your own, that way you know what you have in it, okay? And we're going to make our medium using linseed oil. This is Utrecht store brand alkali refined linseed oil. You don't need to have this much, okay? I'm a professional artist, so I have this much. If you have a jar this size, that's fine. Now this is walnut oil. This is what is going to come with your kit if you're buying the kit. But even the walnut oil, I would want you to add solvent to it to make the medium. I wouldn't want you using it straight out of the bottle, okay? So the solvent we're going to be using is Gamsol. Now Gamsol is an odorless mineral spirit, and it's I don't know if it's safer, but it's not as the fumes don't get to you as much as, say, turpentine will, okay? What solvent does is it breaks down the paint, and for a lot of people, that's what's scary about oil paint, is that you have to have this solvent that you're using. But it isn't really that scary. And as long as you're using it properly, you shouldn't have any issues, especially if you've got like some ventilation, like you have a window open, maybe a fan going, you should be fine, okay? So to make the painting medium, you're gonna need a glass jar with a lid, okay? So hopefully you have some of these laying around the house. And we do. We have a lot laying around the house. And I'll use this, my palette cup, as a unit of measurement, okay? And so I'm going to use my linseed oil. And I'm going to fill up the cup one time with linseed oil. And then I'm going to fill the cup up, or the cup up 3 times with the Gamsol. One, just made a big ass mess. Probably should pour with my right hand. Let's see if that makes a difference. 2, yeah, it does. 2. 3. Okay, so that's a good standard medium. So you get it in the jar and then you mix it up. So you always have this in your jar, clean, ready to go. And then when you're ready to paint, you're putting it into the medium cup. Now, the medium cup, I think, it's pretty significant that you have the cup exactly like I have. So this is the kind that I think works the best. It's got a clip that you can clip onto your palette if you're holding the palette, which I never do. But the point is the depth of it. It's pretty deep, okay? And so what I do is I like to fill it all the way up. And then that way I can dip into it with my brush and I won't get it dirty. Because when you're taking your brush and you're dipping it all the way into the paint or into the medium cup, if you go all the way to the bottom of the medium cup, then the brush spreads out, releases the paint, makes your medium dirty. But I can do a whole painting with my medium cup like this, doesn't get dirty, dirtier than it is right now. And then I can pour it back into my jar and save it, okay? If you get paint in it though, you're gonna have to throw it away, okay? Now to throw it away, the best thing to do is to have another jar or a big can that's got a lid, like a gasoline can or something that you can seal up, and you can just dump your anything that you have to throw away, any of the solvents that you have to throw away into that can, and then save it until such a time as you can take it to the recycle center for hazardous materials and turn it in over there. I mean, that's really the best thing to do. If you were at school, you would have a place to dump it and then they come and take it away, okay? So you have the jar that you made your medium in, you have the medium cup, and then you have another jar. I should have bought a new one because this one is really old and grungy looking. But this is a Silcoil jar. You can kind of see it says Silcoil, S-I-L. So maybe Silicoil, S-I-L-I, coil, C-O-I-L. And the significant thing here, as we open this, is that you can see inside there's that coil, okay? And what that coil does for you is it holds your solvent up above the bottom. And the solvent that you're going to have is you're just going to have Gamsol in here. And I want to pour some more Gamsol in here. So I have it maybe a couple inches over the top of the coil. And that's what I'm going to be using to clean my brushes with. All right, so cleaning the brushes happens in here. Now, this isn't like when you're doing watercolor and you rinse out your brush in water. I don't have this jar open ever until it's time to clean up the brushes, okay? So this is always closed. This is where you're gonna get, fumes with a big open jar like this. So this, the medium cup, you can see is small and it's not gonna be letting off a lot of fumes. So that's, kind of what you want, especially if you live with other people. They're not gonna wanna smell a lot of the turpentine or solvent. Sorry, it's not turpentine, but the solvent. It doesn't really smell. Yeah, I don't smell anything except a little bit of an oil smell, right? And the oil smell smells like, cooking oil. So it's not unpleasant. If you're using like a more, like a turpentine, then obviously, especially if you're getting the cheaper grade turpentine, that will really smell, okay? Then there are other kinds of mediums like Galkid mediums that dry fast, which I don't want using those. But those things, I think that smells horrible. I actually like the smell of turpentine, but that's just me. Okay, so the jar you have for your solvents, the jar you have for your medium. Okay, those are the two jars you have to remember. That always messes everybody up on the first day of painting. Okay, so hopefully won't mess you up. All right. Now, the palette and the palette knife we use to mix color. So if we have some color, like I have some yellow here, and let's say I want to make a green. Okay, so I'm going to use my blue. That's an ultramarine blue. You can see the what this is, what oil paint is pigment suspended in an oil binder. So a lot of times it's safflower oil, could be linseed oil. It really just depends on the manufacturer. It could be walnut oil. So there are all kinds of oils. They're edible oils, basically, that the pigment is suspended into. With acrylic paint, the color is suspended in a clear acrylic binder. Okay, so the only thing that's different between the two paint is the binder. So here I'm taking a little bit of blue with my palette knife, and I'm going to mix it into the yellow. I'm going to make a green. This is why two palette knives come in handy. As I'm mixing, I like to scrape off. This helps me to get everything mixed nice. So that's what the palette knives are for. You don't want to mix these, mix your colors up with your brushes. We're going to go into like how the palette should be laid out when we get to that, when we get to actually color. But this is just to show you, you know, what these things are for, how we use them, that kind of thing. Okay. Now the medium is just to make the paint spread out more. Okay. So we want to have use my this brush different. So I have a canvas board here, so you're going to need that. Somehow got very dirty, probably rolling around in my car. Anyway, so this canvas support you're going to need for the painting. Now this one is a relatively large one. This is 12 by 16. You can get it, you know, 9 by 12, which would be about like that size, okay, for the first painting, or you can get it. I'm using an 11 by 14, I think, in mine. But you see I've got my canvas panel here, and I can dip my brush into the medium, and I can thin out the color that way, okay? So when you see the color that thin, versus that, which is full strength, right, without any medium in it at all. So you can kind of see the difference there, and you can get anything in between. So that's what that's for. That's why we have the medium. That's why we have the medium cup, that'll be evident in the very first assignment. So the very first assignment is going to be about figuring out paint quality, thinness versus thick, okay, to get different values. So that's what the first assignment is going to be all about. You won't be using green. You're going to be using umber. But you are going to need to have a canvas support like this. This is a good thing to do for the first assignment. You know, normally these are, you know, things that students use. Professional artists don't normally use these, but they're basically the canvas, cotton duck, stretched over a cardboard support, and then gesso on top. The other way of getting that is having it stretched over a frame and stapled to a wooden frame, okay? And here you can see what the color of the canvas is naturally versus when it has the gesso on it, okay? The gesso prepares the canvas to take the paint. If we just painted directly onto the unprimed canvas with oil paint, the linseed oil would rot out the canvas, all right? So the canvas support you're gonna need. The other thing that would be nice for you to have, and I've got my Blick catalog here so you can kind of see, I would go online and look this up, is having an easel would be great. Now, a good all-around easel is this one, the Best Classic Dulce easel. It's $285 though. You can get away with, obviously you don't want to spend that. I don't say obvious, I don't know. Maybe you do want to spend that. There are cheaper alternatives that will probably work. The easel I'm using is not that great. They have this one, a single mast, made by American Easel Incorporated. It's $125. You want it tall. This one's 82 inches tall, so that's like what, close to 8 feet, a little bit more than 7 feet. But you don't want to have it. I would say you can get away with like 6 foot tall. So you can find a 6 foot tall easel probably under $100 if you look. And if you go on, eBay or something like that, people are always trying to get rid of those things. So shop around. Now I'm going to show you an alternative. If you don't have an easel, you can't afford to buy one. I'm going to show you what you can do instead. Okay, with what you have at home. But the easel is going to be the best thing, I think. Okay, for you to get. Now, brushes. The brushes you're going to need to start. So this brush I just used, it's not a very good brush, which is probably why I used it. This is a 6 bristle. And so I have a brand new 10 bristle round. Even though it says it's round, you can see it's got a point to it, right? So you want the bristle brushes. Here I have another one, a number 6 bristle flat, okay? You want the bristle brushes because they spread out a lot of paint. And on the early stages of the painting, the bristle brush is the way to go when you're doing an oil painting. But when you get to the later stages of the painting and you want to refine, then you're going to want to get sable brush. So I have 2 here that I ordered online. These are number 4 Blick sable rounds. This is what the sable round kind of looks like, okay, when it's unwrapped. I'm keeping that nice for right now. But this is a soft, fine hair, and this is how you're going to get detail on your paintings. This is a 6 sable round. So a 4 or a 6 is going to be probably all you're going to need for this class, but this one here is a 2 sable round. Obviously you can see you're going to get a lot more detail with something like that when it's that small, okay? Then the other thing I have is a Badger hair blender, and this is soft, like a sable brush. So this would be kind of like a sable bright. And it doesn't have to be sable, it could be a synthetic brush, but it has to be soft, okay, to do blending. And when I say blending, that means we're going to take something, one area and blend it into another area to soften the transition. So this is something you're going to need to have. So the brushes that you see here, I would want to have on the first day to paint, okay? So let's just kick out one of these sables. So you could have 2 6 sables or 2 4 sables, but I would say having 2 is good, okay? Having 2 of them. The brush to blend. And by the way, sometimes to blend, I'll use an old sable round that's no good anymore because you can see it's flaring out. It doesn't have the point. But sometimes I use that to blend with. Okay, so if you've got an old brush like that, that can work too. And then a bristle round, anywhere from 6 to 10, and the bristle flat. So these are the brushes you're going to want to have on the very first day of painting, okay? Along with all the things that I just talked about, Okay, so you're going to need to have those things. The color that you're going to need on the first day, you're going to need to have raw umber. So raw umber is, a brown, basically. And then the following week, you're going to need to have black and white. So titanium white and ivory black. You're going to need those on the following week. Okay. And then that'll be good. You're going to also need to have an object. So you're going to need to have an all white object. And the object I'm using for the demo is going to be a teapot, but it doesn't have to be something that fancy. So it could be something like this, where this is a shampoo bottle, and the top of the shampoo bottle wasn't white, but we had to paint it white, okay? So you can it just needs to be all white, no text, no labels, no design, all white, 100% white. And you could even use something like this, like a water bottle, right? As long as you spray paint it white, it'll be fine. So I want it opaque, solid white. And that's going to be your subject, okay? And then the other thing you're going to need is a light source. And I'm going to talk about the light source and the setup in a separate video. But these are the materials that you're going to need to have. And then as you use these brushes, you're going to see, oh, okay, yeah, I like that. I want more of those, or I want something a little bit different. The other brush that you're going to want to have is this. And this is a 2-inch wide brush. I'd have a bunch of those, okay? Especially for the last painting. And I wouldn't buy these at an art supply store. I would buy these at Home Depot because they're very cheap. At Home Depot, they'll be very expensive if you buy them at an art supply store, more expensive than they should be, okay? So a few brushes like that would be a good thing to have as well. And so I think those are the materials that you're gonna need to have. Hopefully this is clear. I'll make reference to the fact that in the demo, the medium and this is another reason for making it yourself, is the medium that I'm going to be using is going to have one more shot of solvent in it. So instead of being 3 parts solvent plus 1 part linseed, it's going to be 4 parts solvent. And that's because that would be a lean medium. And so you're going to hear me talking throughout the semester of going fat over lean. And when we talk about lean, what we're talking about, or fat, is oil content. So the amount of oil that's in the paint or in the medium. So a lean medium is going to have less oil, more solvent, right? And actually the first painting you're going to do, it's possible to do it completely with solvent, okay, because it's an underpainting layer. But that just kind of makes me cringe. So I have to have a little bit of oil mixed in with that. Okay. Okay. So those are the materials. And if you have all that stuff, you should be fine. Okay. And I think if you start off with the things that I just mentioned, as far as, because the color is where you're going to run into money. So if you just have those 3 tubes of paint and these brushes, for the first painting, you're not going to be laying out a whole lot of money, okay? But as you go, you're going to have to add more stuff to the materials that we're starting with, okay? Okay, so email me if you have any questions.